Hey everyone, I wanted to talk to you today about fatigue and how you can address it by using minerals. I know a lot of you have probably heard about adrenal fatigue. It's kind of one of those terms I feel like is a catch-all term. If you have fatigue, immediately you're told you have adrenal fatigue. And there are ways that you can test for adrenal fatigue. There's different testings that I do using hair tissue testing or the hormone test that I use from Dutch Test. Looks at your cortisol, so you can definitely look at if you do have adrenal fatigue. But I feel like a lot of people get diagnosed automatically with adrenal fatigue and they haven't really been tested for it. So I do feel like that needs to be addressed a little bit further as far as, do you really have it? But there are two things that I really look at that will tell me, are you really in this mode of adrenal fatigue? Now, there's a difference between, there is such a thing as just adrenal exhaustion and then adrenal fatigue. Now, you could be one of those people where you're just really exhausted, you're tired, might have a hard time getting going in the morning, but you kind of do get moving and you can get on with your day. That's just kind of a state of just some adrenal fatigue. It's not terrible. And then there's adrenal exhaustion where you're just completely burned out. And that's those people that get up in the morning, cup after cup after cup of coffee. They can't really get going. And even after all that coffee, they still have a hard time getting going. And by mid-afternoon, they're done for. So I do, when I look at those, I address those kind of separately. I will be a little bit more aggressive with someone who has more of a state of adrenal exhaustion. But the two things that I really like to look at are two minerals that are super important for adrenal exhaustion or fatigue, as sodium and potassium. They're super important minerals. I feel like they get overlooked a lot. The hair tissue testing that I use will look at your sodium potassium levels. I do like to see where your level's at before I would just throw you on some supplements for it. But there are certain things that you can do, even if you don't do the testing to see where your levels are, that could maybe boost you a little bit. One of the things that I utilize is Celtic sea salt. I think everyone should use Celtic sea salt every day anyways, even without adrenal fatigue. But if you have some really big exhaustion, Celtic sea salt is huge. And what I do is, as soon as you wake up in the morning, your adrenals are supposed to be really waking you up in the morning anyway. So that's the time that I recommend to do it right off the bat. So you're gonna wake up in the morning, cup of water. I put a little bit of lemon juice in it. I like the lemon juice in it because it helps with getting your digestion and detoxification going as well. And then I will put a dash of sea salt in and drink that every morning when I wake up. Now, if you're someone who is just burnt out and you just can't get going and the coffee's not even helping you, then I would put 1/4 of a teaspoon of Celtic sea salt in water, and it doesn't have to be much water, and chug it down. Half hour later, do it again. You may need to do it 3 times to really get yourself going, but the sodium is awesome at boosting your adrenal glands. And it's such an easy way to do it without having to actually take a supplement. Now, again, this is something that can help for most people, but you might be one of those where it's just so far gone that we do need to do some testing, and there might be other supplements that we need to put you on that will boost your adrenals a little bit further than just doing the Celtic sea salt. But it's kind of one of those things that I think everyone should probably do anyways. The other one is potassium. You need about 4,700 milligrams a day of potassium just for your normal function, just for all your daily functions that you use potassium for. That's a lot of milligrams. Most people do not get that from diet. It's pretty hard to get that many milligrams from diet. I mean, I even have a hard time getting that much from what I eat on a daily basis. So I tell people to boost their potassium by actually eating the foods that have a ton of potassium in them. So we're talking potatoes, squashes, sweet potatoes, coconut water, celery juice. I'm not a huge fan of celery juice. I tried it. Can't really get into it, but I know a lot of people do. You could doctor it up with some other things maybe, but it has a ton of potassium in it, so it's really good for that. You can also make a potassium broth. I have a recipe that I use. It's kind of a vegetable broth that has a ton of potassium in it. A couple cups of that a day, and you're gonna get a ton of potassium in. So I'll do that as well. It's super easy to make. If you want that, I can send you the recipe for that. It's really easy. But it's great ways for you to get extra potassium in. Potassium and sodium are really needed to nourish those adrenal glands, to get your body really moving, and just kind of give you that vitality that you need throughout the day. Again, these are kind of two minerals that I feel like really get overlooked a lot. And so that's why I started using the hair tissue testing, because I can see those minerals on there, what they're doing. Now, you're one of those people where I can tell you're pretty depleted, I would definitely recommend doing the test, because I want to see how bad those levels are, because we probably would have to supplement with different supplements actually to boost that a little more than just eating potassium foods and taking Celtic sea salt. I would want to see how bad that is and if we need to supplement with other things. I'm not a big fan, like I've said before. I don't just put a lot of people on supplements willy-nilly without testing them, but sodium, potassium are pretty important ones that you can kind of boost them a little bit without necessarily testing for it. But again, if you have a really slow thyroid, slow adrenals, and you're just exhausted, you're probably one of those that we need to test and just see where you're at. And it's a super cheap test to do the hair testing to see what those minerals are doing. So if we need to supplement more than just the sea salt and like taking potassium broth, you might need that a little bit more. And there's nothing wrong with that. I was surprised when I did my first test on myself as well. My sodium and potassium were very depleted. And so I did have to go in a little bit more supplement than just Celtic sea salt, and like even potassium broth. I did a little bit more than that. Boosted it pretty quickly. So it's a really good option to do. If you want to do the test with me, give me a shout out, let me know. It's super easy test, super cheap test. Great way to look at what your adrenals are doing and say, hey, let's get you on some supplements. Or we may just say, you know what, you're not at that state where you're just totally burned out. We could just do the potassium broth and Celtic sea salt. But again, you know, all the minerals feed off of each other too. So what's your calcium and magnesium doing? I want to see what those are doing too, because that's going to affect your thyroid. The calcium will affect your thyroid, as well as the potassium. So again, adrenal fatigue, it kind of, some people give it kind of a bad rap because it is almost a catch-all term now, where if you're tired, you have adrenal fatigue. I don't necessarily agree with that. I don't think that everyone has adrenal fatigue just because you're tired. There's so many other things that can make you tired, but the adrenals definitely need to get nourished with minerals, and that's kind of a missing thing. I feel like it just isn't talked about a lot. It's always, what supplement can we give your adrenals? And there are a ton of adrenal supplements out there. Some are really good, some are kind of worthless. But again, I don't really like putting people on adrenal supplements, an actual supplement, without testing. I just think there's too many factors that need to be looked at when it comes to the actual supplements. So again, if you have any questions, you'd like to try the test out and see what your adrenals are doing, again, it'll look at your thyroid too, and those two feed off each other. It's a great test to try it out and see what's going on, especially if you're really fatigued and you're trying all the things and nothing's working, you're an excessive coffee drinker, and you just can't figure it out. It's a great thing to try. So give me a shout out, let me know, and I hope you found this helpful. We'll talk soon.